What's the most messed up thing you did in a sleepover? Story 1. I was in the bathroom. I could overhear whispers, so I knew they were going to play a prank on me. I thought the prank would be that they would unexpectedly break the door open while I was in there. So to counter surprise them, I decided to only pretend I was on the toilet and to instead hold the door shut by pushing against it with both palms, adding my weight to the door and preventing it from being pushed open. However, this was not their intended prank. They thought I was on the toilet, far from the door, so their idea was to have a sword thrust unexpectedly through the door. The sword went through the door and then straight through the palm of my right hand as well. Blood went everywhere. The sword went in and out quickly. I have vague memories of turning the sink on and wrapping my hand with hand towels, even while blood spurted throughout the room. I don't remember getting in the car, but apparently I was driven to the emergency room. It's now 20 plus years later. The rest of my hand is fine, but I have a small scar of light-colored flesh on my palm where I no longer have any feeling. Usually when I mention the story, I just say that I was stabbed through by a sword when I was a teenager, without going into detail on the how and why, which is significantly more stupid. The same person who did this prank on me decided to prank someone else by holding a knife right above a sleeping person's eye so that when they woke up, the first thing they'd see is a knife blade close up. Thankfully, that particular incident resulted in only a scream with no physical injuries. Looking back, I suspect he may have been an unhealthy friend to hang out with. Story 2. In the mid-late 90s, my brother got really into the anarchist's cookbook and learned how to tap into neighbors' landlines from a box on the pole using a touch-tone phone and some connectors from Radio Shack. We'd have friends sleep over, we are close in age, and we'd sneak out, and he'd hook a phone up so we could call phone sex lines from the outside a neighbor's house in the bushes. I still wonder if they disputed the charges or if the wife just thought the husband was calling 1-900-BIG-TITS at 2 a.m. Story 3. I was away with a friend's family and I was on the phone pretending to the other guys I met this hot babe at the pool and we were gonna sneak out and meet up that night. I also went on to complain about the family who paid for my trip. They heard everything. I cringe to this day when I think about it, like second, third hand embarrassed myself. To be fair, they turned out not to be very nice people, but they were obviously nice to me. Story 4. Got a bloody nose. It was dark and I didn't know the house, so I stuck near the walls and went down the hallway and found the bathroom. Got the bleeding to stop, cleaned up, went back to sleep. In the morning, the mom came in frantic making sure everyone was alive after she saw smeared bloody handprints all the way down the hallway. Story 5. More embarrassing than fucked up. Accidentally clogged the toilet at friend X's house. There was no plunger and the toilet was filling rapidly. I panicked and ran to my friend who promptly called for his dad. His dad takes one look and yells from the bathroom, "Jesus, X, how big of a shit did you take?" It took years before I went back to his house. Story 6. In Boy Scouts, I was the morning cook, meaning I woke up before anyone else to chop wood, make fire, and get water boiling. I grabbed the hatchet and start splitting a log into little splinters for kindling. It was cold and dewy. The hatchet slipped from my hand mid-upward swing and went flying to the tent circle. It seriously flew 10 to 15 yards and fell straight down through the roof of a tent where 4 scouts were sound asleep. I'm not sure how long I waited to hear someone start screaming. I probably sat there in terrified anticipation for over a minute. Then I worried someone might be hurt, so I crawled over to the tent where the hatchet landed. I super quietly unzipped the flap and saw it landed in a bag of clothes very close to some kid's head. I snuck in, grabbed the hatchet, left the tent, zipped it back up, and finished breakfast. I heard them at breakfast complaining that the raccoons has ruined their perfectly nice tent by clawing a hole in it. Story 7. I bathed my friend. 2 of us stayed at a friend's house in our early teens. We raided their parents' liquor cabinet and proceeded to not understand how alcohol works. We drank every kind of liquor under the sun, very quickly over the course of a few hours. We chased shots with popsicles and ate animal crackers to get the taste of gin out of our mouths. One of the 3 of us stood atop a small staircase into the living room, maybe 4 steps a few feet in distance, grabbed onto the railing, turned pale, and then projectile vomited so violently that it all landed and splashed at the bottom of the staircase, leaving the steps clear minus a few drops. He then immediately fell down the stairs and began to laugh in a pool of his own vomit. We picked him up, dragged him into the bathroom, stripped off all his clothes, and shoved him in the shower. He had thick curly hair that was filled with bright red popsicle-colored animal cracker paste. I told him to put out his hands as he kept yelling to not tell everyone he had a small dick. Once he finally complied, I poured shampoo in his hands and told him to clean his hair. He slapped it all into his face, causing him to gag and his eyes to burn. At this point, I had to get him cleaned up, so I did. We had no spare clothes for him barring our friend's brother's clothes. He was quite obese. We had to get a belt and tightly tie what I can only describe as parachute shorts around his waist. We went to sleep afterwards and convinced ourselves no one in the house heard us. If this story is believed to be untrue, the reason I remember it so well is because that friend shouting about his dick had a bigger dick than me, and you never forget finding out your dick is small. Story 8. We had a co-ed church group sleepover at a Vermont farm. I was 13 and recently got a fake testicle. I had my other testicle removed due to an accident. I was getting people to feel my balls and take bets on which one was the real one. Story 9. My friend and I were 11 or 12. His sister was about 14. She announced that she'd never seen a dick in person before and wanted to. Basically, it was a show me yours and I'll show you mine thing. Except that it was directed at me and my friend, which makes sense, I guess. If she'd never seen one before, why not try to look at two at once? Ground rules were set. You can look for as long as you want or as close as you want, but no touching. I'd never seen a vag in person before, so I was up for it. My friend was apparently curious enough to scope out his own goddamn sister, so we all showed each other our junk. After it was over, we never did that again, never spoke of it again, or anything else. Story 10. Was at a sleepover. My buddy slept on his couch. I slept on his beanbag chair with a blanket. After hours of playing 007 GoldenEye, I get up and go use the restroom, except I didn't. I only dreamed I did, and I pissed all over myself at like 4 a.m. I hid the blanket in their jacket closet, it was summertime, and threw the beanbag chair and my pissy underpants in their outdoors dumpster. They lived on a ranch. I was 14 at the time, lol. Story 11. I peed on my friend's couch during a sleepover. I was 10, kinda old to pee the bed, I know. I woke up in a panic, of course, but discovered the couch cushions weren't sewed to the couch and they were identical on both sides. So I flipped that shit, changed into a spare pair of shorts, and went to sleep. A year later, while I was at that friend's house, his mom discovered my huge yellow piss stain on the bottom of a couch cushion. Of course, she didn't suspect me. My friend's little sister took the heat. It was me, Mrs. Schofield. I pissed on your couch and let it soak for a year. Story 12. Played with matches. For years afterward, thought I'd burned my aunt and uncle's house down. I was staying with them. My cousin and I were lighting matches in the kitchen and throwing them into the sink to put them out. The head of one flew off and landed in the shelving unit by the sink. Still smoking, but when we looked for it, we couldn't find it. It was the 80s, so all those kids don't play with matches ads were everywhere. Hours later, we were awakened by my aunt telling us to get out of the house because it was on fire. Watched their house burn to the ground and was terrified to tell them what we'd been doing earlier. I just knew we'd done it, carried that guilt for years. When I was around 15-ish, which was many years later, I finally told my aunt. She started laughing and after realizing I'd been thinking this the whole time, hugged me and explained it had been the wiring in the back bedroom. I was an adult before I finally understood, after learning about how fire marshals investigate fires, that it wasn't just an assumption they'd made and could let go of that guilt. So I guess technically the most screwed up thing I did on a sleepover was traumatize myself for years. Story 13. Was probably in like 6th grade maybe. A buddy of mine had a birthday sleepover. Had a super cool basement with pool and GameCube and a mini fridge, dope parents who bought us pizza and all that. It was about like 15 of us spending the night. At some point around 2 a.m., someone wanted to play Mario Kart and all you heard was a big crash and suddenly a very faint, I think I just spilled orange soda on the GameCube. Cue a faint bzzz sound and yeah, GameCube was fucked. Buddy's parents were not happy. Pretty sure that was the last big sleepover like that. Story 14. We found a Kraft Singles in the fridge and put one over the nose and mouth of a friend of ours who fell asleep on the couch before everyone else. It immediately softened and molded into a cheesy seal over his face, and he stopped breathing. We all freaked out for a solid 10 seconds very quietly until we heard him make a chewing sound. Motherfucker smelled cheese and took immediate action despite being unable to breathe, and just straight up ate a mouth-sized hole into the single unconsciously. We then proceeded to plaster the entire package onto his face one at a time and watch him hoover up the cheese slices in order to not die. Story 15. I got my first period at a sleepover, and lucky for me, the first year of periods came with wicked vomiting and diarrhea. So in the middle of the night, right after everyone fell asleep, I destroyed my friend's bathroom with a volcanic amount of diarrhea. Then, on my way back to the living room, where 5 preteen girls were crammed, I proceeded to vomit directly between 2 girls sleeping. I had to ask the mom for help with cleaning up the mess. Story 16. When I was a stupid kid, I got invited for a sleepover. It was a few of us and we would be going paintballing the next day, through generosity of the host and his parents. Now, I knew most of them from my school, but was really only good friends with one, and he had suggested they invite me as he knows I like to paintball. In the nighttime when we were all in the living room being loud and dumb kids, I stupidly said the host was probably upstairs fucking his mom. Everyone burst out into laughter. Well, I said it out loud enough that they heard upstairs as well, and his mom wasn't very happy. The next day it was brought up and they completely blamed the wrong person. I never said a word about how it was me. That was maybe 10 or 11 years ago, and I still think about it. It was so rude and unnecessary, I wish someone had ousted me, but you live and you learn. Story 17. We were all like 9 or 10-year-old girls, and everyone else had fallen asleep except for me, so I decided I would play a prank on them. I got up and shook a good amount of black pepper into my hand and went to several of the girls and held it under their noses. What I was thinking would happen was they would wake up sneezing and be like, hey, that was silly. But instead, they ended up waking up crying because they inhaled pepper, and turns out black pepper being inhaled into a sensitive orifice can really fucking sting. The girls cried so hard that my parents woke up and I had to explain the whole innocent idea behind my scheme. I felt so bad. Story 18. This is not the weirdest thing, but someone that has always stuck out to me. Had a girl tell me that she knew someone who masturbated by holding themselves up at the top of a door and basically doing pull-ups against the door to get off. She even demonstrated it for me. Then she took a very long shower with a detachable shower head. She came out silent and out of it for a bit. It didn't occur to me until a few years later that she had the most defined arms out of anyone I knew at the time who was our age. I remember thinking that was weird since she played soccer, but her upper body was ripped. Also, no one would make that up and say it was their friend because it was so strange and she was way too good at it. I tried after her thinking, sweet new way to get off, but I could only raise my body a few times. Anyways, girl got off from the corner of her closet door by doing pull-ups. Story 19. Big sleepover for my birthday. Some dude wanted to make a vile concoction of stuff from our kitchen to pour on the first one to fall asleep. He fell asleep first. I poured it on him so it looked like he peed. He woke up and freaked out. I gave him spare shorts and we washed his. I still feel bad about it, but he kinda had it coming. Story 20. I was at a sleepover at my best friend's house in 7th grade. Her brother was 2 years older and really cute. All evening, he'd ask if I'd come out with him after everybody was asleep. I said no, but of course, late at night, I felt him tugging on my foot. My friend and I were in her queen bed, and he was at the end, whispering at me to please come talk to him. For some reason, I was finding the whole thing hilarious and trying to laugh quietly. Dude pulls his shorts down and shows me this massive boner. While impressive, just set me off laughing harder. Finally, his sister rises up like a kid in The Exorcist and screams, "Michael, stop trying to get her to look at your boner." We exchanged a meaningful look as we heard his mother yell, "God damn it, Michael," and fling her door open. It was too soon for us. I had seen my first adult penis and I needed time to process it. We did go out when I was in 9th or 10th grade, but I never saw that beast again. Story 21. So I have a history of sleep talking and walking issues, and they're especially heightened when I'm stressed. I don't like being away from home, so sleepovers are a recipe for disaster for me. Lo and behold, I woke up one morning after my first sleepover to the horrifying news from my friend that I started sleepwalking, yelled karate chop over and over, and proceeded to ruthlessly swing my arms into my friend's stomach, effectively waking her up out of dead sleep. We were 8. This was the first time I slept over at her house, and I had never told her about my sleepwalking problems. She still makes fun of me about it to this day. Story 22. Was like 12 and we were on a trampoline flashing people driving by. We thought we were sexy shit. At 12. Surprised we didn't get kidnapped by a predator. Edit. Dang, this blew up. So more details about the night. We crank called people telling them their order of like 1,000 dildos was ready or something amazingly stupid like that. We blocked our return ID, but the one time we didn't, a guy called back a few moments later absolutely furious, telling us he hadn't ordered those and demanding who we were. We slept on that same trampoline with some pillows and blankets and had some late night confessions, me and 2 other girls. They'd both been SA'd already at 12. I don't remember details and I wouldn't tell them anyway. I hadn't and I felt so bad for them. Wondered how the world was like that already. Also scared for myself. Pretty sure I pissed myself laughing like twice. It was a truly carefree day despite the horrendous decisions we were making with the flashing and crank calls, LMFAO. They were good friends. I hope they're doing well. Story 23. When I was in middle school, I had a sleepover at my friend's place, and we spent the night taking questionable selfies on our bed and sending them to guys in our class. Later that night, we took turns throwing up in her bathroom after eating copious amounts of pizza because we both had raging eating disorders. It wasn't exactly the healthiest friendship I've ever had. Story 24. My childhood best friend had 2 younger sisters, their ages 2 years apart. So we were 11, middle sister was 9, youngest sister was 7. We snuck into youngest sister's room, who was a notoriously heavy sleeper, and loosely tied a string around her wrist, then tied the other end to the ceiling fan, turned the fan on low so her arm was slowly helicoptering in circles while she slept. His mom made the rounds to check on all us kids a few minutes later and started cracking up when she saw, told us to make sure we took it back down before too long, and we assured her we planned to. She went back to bed and must have told her husband, who most certainly did not find the humor in it. We both got grounded for months. Story 25. I had a really weird first sexual experience at a sleepover. I was pretty young, like 10 or so I'd guess, and my friend who was sleeping over my house was a few years older than me. I had seen sex scenes in movies and was an avid reader and had read about sex and was curious. But I hadn't seen porn or anything like that, and my parents hadn't talked about any of it other than the very basics. Anyway, friend and me basically got naked and laid beside each other and moaned and pretended to have sex. And then we just got dressed and didn't talk about it ever again. And then I remember a couple weeks later, I had another girl over who was a family friend and we were the same age. And I told her about what me and other friend did, and then we did the same thing. And then nothing like that ever happened again. And honestly, it's one of those memories I block out almost always, but Reddit has a way of getting things out. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more content like it. Plus, comment down below your favorite story and a story of your own.